I don't know if I can say this word right now, but I do believe that there is an incestuous problem with the bees because all of the queens are being made in certain locations.
Woo, doggy! Now we're cooking.
Greetings to the brightest audience in the country. This is Real Science Radio. I'm Fred Williams.
And I'm Doug McBurney, Bible student, science geek, amateur comedian. Fred, it is great to be back with you talking about real science on Friday.
This week, we're going to talk about the magnificent design of both plants and insects and how their designs benefit people.
Yes, people, nature, the world, the environment. You know, Fred, me being a science geek and a Bible student with a particular interest in God's creative design, I'm really looking forward to hearing what our special guest has to teach us and our audience. Dr. Thomas Dykstra, Thomas M. Dykstra, is a PhD entomologist, an agriculture consultant. He's the lab director at Dykstra Labs in Gainesville, Florida. Dr. Dykstra received his master's in entomology from the University of Florida, where he investigated neurophysiology of pheromone production in moths. He then received a PhD in insect bioelectromagnetics under Dr. Philip S. Callahan there at Florida. After college, he founded Dykstra Laboratories, which more broadly investigates bioelectromagnetics ranging from bacteria all the way to humans. Predominantly, he studies insect olfaction from the standpoint of bioelectromagnetics and has developed a new theory based on the fusion of biophysics and neurophysiology, which I'm hoping to understand more about, seeing as I don't understand the majority of the syllables that I just pronounced here on the air. Dr. Thomas M. Dykstra, welcome to Real Science Radio.
It is good to be with you and your audience, Doug and Fred, or maybe it should be Fred and Doug. Really don't know who gets top billing on this, so I'll just say both to make sure that I keep both of you happy.
Well, I heard bioelectromagnetics several times there, and, you know, obviously that's going to pique my interest in, you know, electromagnetism. So, Dr. Dykstra, how do electromagnetic fields affect insects? How does that play in you're apparently an expert in this. How does that play in with insects?
Based upon the introduction that he said right now, I was very impressed with it, thinking, wow, do I know all this stuff? This is so cool. I should talk to myself more often. Yeah, bioelectromagnetics is looked at in two different ways. One is exogenous fields, that is how electromagnetic fields affect insects from, let's say, the environment. And then we also have endogenous fields, and that is how electromagnetic fields are affecting it within the insect itself. In other words, communication between different parts of the organism, the insect. It may have to deal with certain parts of the organs, for example, that may have the ability to communicate with one another. And so these exogenous and endogenous fields are all generally encompassed within the field of bioelectromagnetics. And your first pronunciation was excellent, Doug. Second one needs to work on that, but we'll work on the whole bioelectromagnetics pronunciation. And by the end of this presentation, you are going to be an expert. I can see this.
And so does these electromagnetic fields, when you say exogenous, do you mean fields within the bug's body, between organs, fields between the bugs? Help me understand.
Yeah, exogenous would usually mean outside the insect. So people, when they think, usually when they're talking to me, the first thing they think of is, 5G, cell phone towers, and this is the direction that they want to go. Is it affecting the insects? Is it not affecting the insects? Whereas the endogenous fields are the fields that actually work inside the insect. In other words, how do fields get detected inside the insect? Is there communication going on between them? This is more of my focus because I do look at insect olfaction, where I'm interested in how these fields are picked up by the insects. So I discuss things like biological antenna, how biology is run by these antenna based upon these both exogenous and endogenous fields, and how they are able to do the things that they do. And so that's kind of in a nutshell as I ramble on that I'm trying to portray.
No, that's exactly it. So this is why we need to have you on. See, I had exogenous and endogenous. I had those backwards.
Come on, Doug.
So,
so glad I'm here to correct you.
So I did want to ask you though, since you bring it up. I mean, is 5G killing the honeybees? What's going on with that? Should we be worried about that?
I'm sure that it has an effect. All insects have the ability in order to detect some of these fields, so that's not really the issue. What we have with the killing is colony collapse disorder. Colony collapse disorder certainly could be related to the fields. The research that I have read, in my opinion, has not been conclusive, but I generally do feel that the insects have been weakened to the point where they are no longer able to find their way back to the colony. I do believe that there is a I don't know if I can say this word right now, but I do believe that there is an incestuous problem with the bees because all of the queens are being made in certain locations.
Doggy, now we're cooking.
We're not getting the genetic variability that we should be finding in the bees, and because of this, I believe that they're more weakened and therefore more vulnerable to this, because we know that the wild bees are not subject to colony collapse disorder.
So insects, just like humans, are affected by a genetic load.
Oh yes, oh yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah.
Genetics is genetics is genetics. Yep.
And so, but the honeybee problem, it's a real problem.
Yes, it's a real problem, but only among those colonies that have usually, queens that they get from a supply house, because it is at this point right now where a lot of beekeepers have actually gone into a forest and they'll actually set up trappings, trap colonies, where they will attract a colony so that they can possibly get a wild colony and get some of those genes into their colony, because it is generally well known in the industry that the wild bees are doing much better than the, if you want to call them farm-raised bees or what have you. And so because of this, going out into a forest and trying to catch, especially during the swarming season, trying to catch wild colonies is usually going to put you in much better shape as far as the long term is concerned.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to hear that the wild bees are doing okay. That's encouraging. And so as I was researching your field and you, I began researching agricultural consultation because I was not aware that there was such a thing. And I realize now how, just talking with you about the bees for 3 minutes, it's like, wow, this is huge, impactful, important work that's going on. But as I was researching you, I came across the term regenerative agriculture, and it was related to you on some website, and then I looked it up. I had to sift through a bunch of left-wing propaganda and climate hysteria. But eventually, after I included your name in the search, then I found out a little bit more about what regenerative agriculture is. And can you tell us about it? And is it good? Is it bad? Is it something we should be interested in?
Yeah, there's no way to tell you whether it's good or bad. Let me tell you that right now, because we have no accepted definition of regenerative agriculture. So I'm already on the record. I've got a video online talking about regenerative agriculture with Glenn Rabenberg, and this has already been a little bit hashed out. And so to either repeat what has been said or to kind of maybe educate the audience for those who haven't seen it, regenerative agriculture is the new term. We've had organic agriculture, we've had sustainable agriculture. There are many types of agriculture that are out there. Regenerative seems to be an amalgamation of a number of different things, but it does include NPK, salt-based fertilizers, which I'm not a fan of. It does include pesticides. You're certainly allowed to use those. I'm not a fan of those either. And it does have a climate component to it, which I'm also not a fan of, because right now the emphasis is on climate change and carbon sequestration. And so because of this right now, I'm upset that people are trying to co-opt this, because I think that farmers should be focused on their crops. They should be focused on their soil. And if they take their eye off the ball, they're not focused on that which is most important. Because when you talk about carbon sequestration, it has its importance in agriculture. But if it's the primary thing that you're concerned about, then that means you're not paying attention to your corn or your soybeans or any other crop that you may be raising. So I do have issues with it. I distance myself from regenerative agriculture when I can, but I also understand that not everyone has the same definition because there is no accepted definition, and that's why there's a little bit of confusion out there, Doug.
Oh, I gotcha. So when you do agricultural consultation, you focus on the agriculture.
I do. I'm talking to farm. Most of the people that I talk to are farmers. I enjoy talking to farmers. They're the ones who are doing the work. I don't have to use a medium to go through. I don't have to talk through another professor. I don't have to go through a county extension agent. I don't have to go through anybody else. I can talk to them directly. I often go to conferences. We talk about farming issues. I talk to the farmers directly, and then we have breakout sessions that occur in the hallways. We have breakout sessions that occur in the bathrooms. Wherever they're asking questions, they want to be able to know get their questions answered, so that when they go back to their farm, they can utilize some of the new information that I may or may not be able to teach them. So that's a lot of the agricultural consulting that I do. I do it online, I do it through Zoom, I do it over the phone, I do it face to face, and that is a major part of the type of consulting that I do at Dykstra Laboratories.
Oh, and just so for all of the people who live in apartments and in the cities, and for Gen Z in general, farms are where food comes from. It's actually not from the store. It's actually from a farm.
Wait, I need to write this down. Could you repeat that again?
So, Dr. Dykstra, your comment on with the bees and needing the wild type, it just reminds me, it's artificial selection. Just like with dog breeds, it tends to remove information from the population. I'd never thought of bees that way too, that they have the same problem that they have to deal with, and that's why it's good to get wild type bees into your environment.
And that's why I'm on the show today. It's to enlighten both of you in issues such as this.
Yeah,
amen.
You definitely are. So one of our producers, they turned us on to you after hearing you talk about the fact that, bugs, when they're eating your plants, that could be an indication that the plants are unhealthy. They tend to go after unhealthy plants.
They do. The unhealthy plants are gone after quite readily. Healthy plants are not. And so once you realize, this has been known for long before I came into the picture, probably 50, 60 years, this has been known. And it's been talked about a lot. When I came into the picture, it was only about 25 years ago, I started to take a look at this issue, and I wanted to be able to put numbers to it and get some more specifics. And that's a part of the reason why I speak at conferences where they're asking questions about healthy crops and insects attacking them. And we all know that there are plenty of tropical places, whether it be the tropical rainforest, whether it be on islands of Kauai, which I've been to and I've talked about before, where plants are not being eaten. And it was always a little bit of a mystery as to why are these plants not being eaten. And once you trace it back to the fact that some plants are healthy and they're not eaten, and other plants are not healthy and they are eaten, it then becomes more obvious to me and others that insects are garbage collectors. They were designed in order to be garbage collectors. So because of this, this is their job. They do it well. I don't look at them as competing with us so much as I do as doing us a service.
Oh, okay. So that's like a mind-boggling statement, because I've always assumed that the bugs are the enemy. And in fact, that reminds me of when my children were very small, we were in the grocery store and we got into the organic vegetable section. And my young daughter asked me, "What does organic mean?" And I said, "That means it's got bugs on it." And so it's always been kind of a joke, but now you're telling me that if that fruit or vegetable or whatever it is in that organic section, even if it never encountered pesticides, if it grew healthy, there are no bugs on it. There were no bugs on it.
Yeah, you can have a conventionally raised vegetable that doesn't have bugs on it, and you can have an organically raised vegetable that doesn't have bugs on it, as long as it has enough health associated with it, what we call in the industry as Brix. This allows us then, in order to say, all right, this has got a Brix level of this has a Brix level of that. That's why the insects are attacking this, and that's why they're not attacking that.
I wanted to ask, could soda crackers, could they be not good if they've got bugs all over them? Is that indication? And the reason I ask is one time my sister was eating a soda cracker, and I could see it across the room. I'm like, your cracker's moving. I mean, it looked like it was moving. and she looked at it, and it was loaded with insects, and she had already eaten half the cracker. So
There's no real
that's an
harm done in
indication
that.
those soda crackers are going bad. I think that cracker's bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, soda crackers are a type of processed food. So when you're dealing with processed food, it has a chance of being, it's more vulnerable to insects. There's no doubt about it. However, if you take a look at God's food, okay, fruits made by God, vegetables made by God, nuts made by God. When you're talking about all of this, this now falls into the realm of, did God make a mistake? And if he did not, how is this? Can this be looked at? And so, because we have altered soda crackers, they become more vulnerable because of what we've done to it. As far as the vegetables, the fruits, and the nuts that are out there, that is something that was not meant to be as vulnerable. But we all know that some trees are relatively weak. And in those particular cases, God has made insects in order to bring them in and take out the tree, take out the plant, take out the bush, take out the flower, whatever needs to be taken out. That's their job, and they do it well. And this way, it allows us, in order to eat more healthy food, and leaves the insects to eat the less healthy food.
Wow.
Okay.
It's a pretty brilliant design.
Yes, I know.
Yes,
Imagine that.
absolutely.
It's almost as if God knew what he was doing.
Like he had a plan.
Like there was some plan there. Yes.
Intelligence. All of that. Wow. Yeah.
So I did a Google search on this Brix, B-R-I-X, and it stands for Balling Relative Intensity Index.
Balling Relative Intensity Index.
Now, can you
Yeah.
say that 10 times fast, Fred, or no?
Balling Relative Intensity, no, I can't. I would have thought, thinking about this, you think back to November, I wonder if that was the measure taken backstage at maybe CNBC and MSNBC and CNN. Balling.
It may. I mean, I was always told that it was named after Dr. Brix. And so because of that, that's what I use. But if there's some alternative definition out there, I need to become a little bit more aware of this because someone's going to catch me. I'll be giving a presentation. I'll say it's based upon Dr. Brix. Someone will raise their hand in the audience. Fred will be in the audience. Doug will be in the audience. You'll start questioning me. I'll get all embarrassed. Everyone's going to lose interest in me. And so, yeah.
Well, no, Dr. Dykstra, Fred is just quoting what Google told us.
And Google is truth. Yeah.
Well, okay. So anyway, as best I can tell, there seems to be some intersection between Dr. Brix and Dr. Balling. Brix with gravity, Balling with measuring sugar, and so when this is something we'll have to get to the bottom of. By the way,
should.
we're going to get our crack research staff working on that because we do know that there was a Balling Relativity Index at backstage at CNN on November 6th, and I think it lasted like a week. But this is Balling, not Bawling.
I got the joke right from the get-go.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, if you have
No,
to
you should be a
explain the joke.
comedian. I mean, I'm just saying.
An amateur one at that.
Well, so when Fred first said Brix, and when I first heard Brix, I naturally thought of bricks, like Winston Churchill building his house and stuff, and I thought about bricks. But this is a measure of. Well, could you explain it to me and help me understand?
Okay, well, the Brix is usually measured with a refractometer, and the refractometer is a device that simply measures the bending of light. So as light passes through a solution, and this is usually a plant solution that we squeeze out of a plant, once light bends out of it, the degree to which it bends is put on a Brix scale. And so that scale can run anywhere between about 1 to 20 for leaf Brix. For nectar, it can easily run 20, 30, or 40 Brix. And by the time you get up to honey and molasses, you could be running about 70 Brix. So there's a lot of different substances out there that have a high Brix or a low Brix. But when we're measuring plants, I usually tell people to take a look at the leaf Brix because that's where the sugar is made, and the refractometer is mostly, although not completely, but mostly testing sugar. It's mostly using that. So because of that, you often find Brix and sugar being used synonymously. So when I'm giving a presentation, I will often use them synonymously. If someone decides to challenge me after that, I would certainly acknowledge that it does deal with total dissolved solids, but the total dissolved solids are usually low enough that you don't need to worry about the rest of it because sugar is dominating the reading. And so when you get a reading of 2 Brix, 4 Brix, 10 Brix, 12 Brix or more, you understand, most people should understand that it's predominantly measuring sugar, and the rest of it is just there to be measured in addition to it, but it doesn't change the Brix reading. It doesn't send it up from 2 Brix up to 18 Brix just because you have secondary plant metabolites and some other substance in there. So that's how it's done in a nutshell. So because we use a refractometer to measure it, which is based upon the bending of light, that's where the term refraction comes from. It is because that's the device, that's what we use. We understand that there are limitations to it, but it works very, very well for farmers, and this gives them an idea of how healthy their plant is, and it gives them a chance to test their plant immediately. It can be done in as little as 1 minute. So you can go out to your field, test a plant or a series of plants, get a Brix reading back, and you don't have to send it away and spend a fair amount of money in order to get the information back. Now, there's a lot of other ways in order to measure plants, but this is the fastest and it's the most complete way in order to determine the health of the plant.
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, a couple of questions.
All right,
if I
one
have
at a
my
time, please. I got to go slow.
If I have my garden at home and I don't want to use pesticides because, don't want to spray. So can I get a refractometer, or does it cost $1 million, or is there something I can get for at home?
Yeah, the refractometer used to be $1 million. Now Amazon's got it down to about 20. So you're going to be able to buy one much more affordably than the $1 million model. Now the $1 million model, lots of bells and whistles, LED lights, makes breakfast for you in the morning. Very impressive piece of machinery. But the regular Brix refractometer is running about $20. You can get a digital one if you are okay with using batteries, Doug, and I just don't know whether or not you're comfortable with technology.
There's a diagram now that helps me.
There is. Putting them upside down, right side up. I get it.
Thankfully.
So if you use a few AAA batteries, the digital one would be starting probably about $120. They can easily run $300, $400. Still below the $1 million model that you and I love so much.
Okay, so if somebody has a home garden, they would want to maybe buy one of these?
Yeah, you can do that.
Walk us through the practicality of that.
Okay. Well, what you would do is you would remove 1 leaf, 2 leaves, 3 leaves, 5 leaves, 10 leaves. I mean, I'm usually doing 30 at a time because I'm trying to do a statistical analysis, but you remove several leaves. Oftentimes the homeowner will put them in a garlic press, and then you're just going to squeeze, just as you would squeeze anything in a garlic press. And then you're going to get, hopefully, 2 to 3 drops of the leaves, and it pops out the bottom, and usually you have the refractometer directly underneath it, and the drops then fall on top of the refractometer, and then you close the manual refractometer, not the digital one, and then you kind of point it towards light. It can be indoor light, it can be close to the sun, you don't want to look directly at the sun, and this gives you enough light so that you can see what the reading is telling you. So if something comes in at about 4 or 5 Brix, that tells you, okay, this plant is a little low on the health scale, but that gives you an idea of where you are. So you would normally squeeze it with a garlic press. Take a look in the refractometer. The garlic press is going to cost you, I don't know, what do they cost? $15 in a store, give or take. There are more complex models out there. There are vice grips, which have been used too. I happen to use a plant sap press when I travel. That thing is running, $300, $400, $500, and this allows me to do a lot of leaves at the same time when I'm going to a farmer's field and I need to be able to get dozens of readings in short order because my hands are not as big as farmers, and so I get a little tired when I'm squeezing the garlic press over and over and over again. So I use a plant sap press in order to get it done, but a homeowner wouldn't need to get nearly as involved as what I do in my business.
So then once you do that, I mean, what's the next step for, say, the farmer or the homeowner? What can they do?
Well, let's stick with the homeowner because I'm going to get to the farmer.
I see.
Okay.
So because Doug is a homeowner and he's not really caring about the farmers that much, We've got to cater to Doug right now, Fred. So I'm just going to bring the conversation down to his level so that he can follow along. All right, if the homeowner's doing this and you got a garlic press and you get a measurement, what can you do? Well, it depends upon if it's a high Brix or a low Brix plant. So if it's a high Brix plant, there's really not anything you need to do. So if it's coming in and you're getting a leaf Brix reading of 14, 15, 16, 17 Brix, there's really nothing that you need to do at that point. You're not going to have insects attacking it. You're not going to have fungus infections attacking the plant, and you're going to be in good shape. But on the other hand, not for Doug, because he raises great plants in his home garden, but other people, like his neighbors, who are not raising healthy plants, and they're coming in at 2, 3, 4 Brix, their plants are going to be more likely attacked by insects, and therefore you're going to be able to tell, one, by the presence of the insects that you've got a problem. You can then verify it with the Brix refractometer, and then I've got a chart which is online which talks about which insects are attracted to what Brix levels, because they've got 4 different feeding guilds that I've broken the insects into, saying that the aphids are going to be found on the lower Brix plants. You'll find grasshoppers on slightly higher Brix plants, and I discussed that in relative depth during my presentations. So if you've got access to the chart, which I think everyone does, because if you've got the internet, my YouTube videos are out there. I think I've got over 41 out there. And so this chart is out there on several of the videos, and it's also on several other websites. People have co-opted it and taken it as their own, which is good, because that's just getting the information out. So it's that chart that I usually use when I'm talking during presentations, and it helps the homeowner, so it gives them an idea so that they know that there's a difference between a 2 Brix plant and a 14 Brix plant. As a matter of fact, there's a world of difference between those 2 plants.
Right. And so, and we'll link to all your stuff and link to your YouTube channel. And so what do I do if I have, let's say I got my 4 rows of rutabagas, and over here they're 14 Brix, but over here they're 2 Brix. Do I want to destroy the sick plants? What do I do about it?
Well, the insects will do a pretty good job of destroying those 2 Brix plants, so you might not have to move in and take them out with a pesticide of your choice. You could just do nothing, and they'll probably be taken out. But if they're right next to some other plants that are high enough, you will find that the insects will be attacking the 2 Brix plants, and they'll be avoiding the 14.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Then that really gets to the utility. So I don't have to worry about them eating my healthy plants.
No, your neighbor needs to worry about them eating their plants. I think we established that.
All right, all of
the neighbor. Remember, this is a Christian show, okay? We need to be concerned about our neighbor, Doug.
Yes, indeed. Well, that blows my mind, because I just always assumed that the bugs were there and they wanted to eat the healthiest plants, because, well, I didn't know anything about it. But this opens up a whole new reality, which that's what I love about Real Science Radio and bringing folks on like you, Dr. Dykstra. It's mind-boggling and expanding. Wow, love it.
Well, is there any kind of thinking outside of the box, like, okay, you want to protect your plants, so you plant, or somehow you get some unhealthy plants mixed in with your healthy plants to, like, draw all the insects to.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. That's how I wanted to get to the farmers, because I do care about my neighbors, and some of my neighbors are farmers.
You're trying to save yourself right now. I see where you're going.
So no, but I did want to, because I'm sure that you offering agricultural consulting advice to me is probably not going to put food on your table, but to big farmers, can you help them with your knowledge to avoid pesticides and better manage their crops, and how does that happen?
Yes, I can.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a follow-up. How to do that? Got it.
That's what we love about the radio.
I was like, man, this is awesome. I got a short question, one-word answer.
That's the perfect radio answer.
Yeah. How to do it? It really depends. There are different crops, and I would approach them differently. So it's going to depend upon what has been done on the land for a long time. So in other words, am I dealing with toxic soil? If I'm dealing with toxic soil, there are some things I'm not going to be able to put into the soil because the roots aren't going to be able to pull them up, and in which case I have to resort to foliar feeding. We understand how God has set things up, and that is that plants do not get their nutrients through the leaves with the exception of carbon dioxide and water. They open up the stomata, and those two main ingredients get inside, whereas the rest of the nutrients traditionally come in through the root system. And so because of this, if I'm dealing with toxic soil, because the farmer's been putting down 30 years worth of pesticides, I have to approach it differently. If I'm dealing with an organic grower who doesn't have the pesticides and hasn't had it on for a while, there's going to be a different approach when we're looking to see. I do want to take a look at the Brix levels. I want to know where they're at. Because if they're at 2 Brix, that's different than 8 Brix. It's different than 10 Brix. It's different than 14. So I need to know what is our starting point, what are they lacking right now, and in some cases we may need to order some other tests. So if we find out that the Brix levels are very low, I have a number of questions that I'm going to ask them. I want to source the seed to find out if the problem is with seed. We want to take a look at the soil to see if the soil is the problem. And then we establish if we need a soil test, we'll order it. If I need a tissue test of the plant, I will order it. If I need a plant sap analysis test, which tells you about the movement of nutrients inside the plant, I can order that too. Those all cost money, but they also add a lot of information and help the farmer to become a little bit more complete when he's trying to understand his crops so that we can zero in on what the problem is and then start to move in various inputs in order to help improve the situation so that the farmer not only can make a profit, because right now they're not making enough profit right now. Some of them are at zero, some of them are breaking even, many of them are going out of business, and so I have made it I wouldn't call it my life mission, but it's certainly become an important part of my job in order to keep farmers in business so that they can continue to not only farm, especially if they enjoy it, and many of them do, or they can even pass it on to their children if they wanted to do that. Because a lot of the children right now, if they see dad struggling, they don't want to take over the farm and they just want to move on to something else because it looks too hard and they're not making the money that they should be. And so there are lots of different ways to approach that. And so these are some of the questions that I ask and some of the approaches that I have in order to help a farmer reach the point where he's actually making profit once again.
Awesome. Hey, you can cut that and you can use that for an ad. I would say hire that guy. That if I'm a farmer. Now, but in everything you just said, are you saying that pesticides are bad for plants?
Pesticides are bad for plants, but not as bad as the microbes in the soil. So most of the problem with pesticides is that they're killing the microbes in the soil.
Oh.
So the insecticides are taking out microbes, the fungicides are taking out microbes, the herbicides are taking out microbes, the nematicides are taking out microbes. And when you take out the microbes raise the plant. They're the ones putting nutrients into the roots. They're either bringing them into the roots or they're bringing them in close proximity to the roots. Without the microbes, you can't get copper, manganese, iron, cobalt. You can't get a lot of these micronutrients into the plant without these microbes. And if you can't get the microbes in the plant, it's not photosynthesizing the way that it should be, and the plant is not photosynthesizing. It doesn't produce sugar, and if it doesn't have the sugar being produced, it comes in as a low Brix plant when I measure it. So we know that there's a problem. The plant is not photosynthesizing in the way that it should. All plants want to be photosynthesizing above 10 Brix, and preferably at 14 and above. Right now, we're not getting that with a number of crops that are out there, and so corrective measures need to be made in this process. So yes, to answer your question, the pesticides are not helping the situation. They are usually there in order to help a low Brix situation. Low Brix farming is expensive because you often have to protect it from insects and put on an insecticide. You often have to protect it from a fungus infection, and so you put on a fungicide. You often have weed problems and because the soil is not healthy, and you have to put on herbicides. So low Brix farming is expensive. If you switch to a high Brix farming, the inputs go down and it becomes much more affordable, because if you're getting, let's say, $900 an acre for corn and you reduce your inputs from $870, which is the current average right now, down to about $300 to $400 of input, your profit goes through the roof.
Oh, wow.
Wow, it sounds like a vicious circle to me. If you got a low Brix farm and then you're putting pesticide on it, and you're maybe getting rid of some of the insects, but you're also kind of promoting the low Brix, right? Did I hear that right?
That's
okay.
correct.
Huh.
Yep.
So
Okay.
this alters my understanding of like everything related to farming. I assumed that the farmer, it was basically constantly at war with bugs
Yes.
and weeds. And I assume that most farmers simply prophylactically applied pesticides and fungicides to their
They do.
crops. They
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so that assumption's not right, but maybe that's not the best way to be doing it, right?
Not the best way to be doing it. Yeah, it's usually done quite routinely. Farmers are often spreading that, even if they don't think they might need it, but they might need it later on. Well, I'll just spray it just in case. You're talking about usually a minimum of $30 an acre for a given pesticide. It doesn't get much lower than that, especially if you have an aerial application. And some of them can get to be 125 per acre. And this is very, very expensive to be putting down one pesticide or two pesticides or three pesticides. It gets to the point where the inputs get to be higher and higher and higher, which bites into your profits more and more and more. And so therefore, if you teach the farmer that there is a better way to get this done and that you can reduce your inputs, then clearly we should be going in that direction. But right now, they need to be taught, because your preconception of what farmers are doing is mostly true. That's why they need to be told that there is a better way. And so, for example, you have to mention, that for thousands of years, we weren't using pesticides and plants were still coming up. And so once you introduce that logic, especially if they understand, whether or not you're reading your Bible or whether you're not, you know that people have been raising plants for thousands of years. Okay, the evidence is there. And so because of this, we also knew about spreading salts on. That's a reference from 3,000 years ago from the Bible too. And so you've got these references right now where salt is bad, which is why I steer people away from salt-based NPK fertilizers, salt-based pesticides, that there is a certain inherent danger with them, especially if you keep applying them repeatedly during the season, year after year, decade after decade. The land becomes degraded to the point where it becomes very difficult in order to raise healthy crops, and in so doing, the insects will come in and start eating those same crops.
Wow. Okay, so you're saying some things that upset the paradigm of farming. And from what I understand, based on the research I've been able to do, you have some experience with this. You studied and basically challenged the olfactory model in insects. Did I read that right? And can you explain to me what that was? And was that a significant controversy?
Still is. I don't think it's gonna end before I'm dead and 6 feet under. So the insect olfactory theory right now is based upon a classic lock and key mechanism where the odorant goes inside the insect antenna and it is detected there through a classic lock and key mechanism. We understand this mechanism because we understand that this is in part how noses work. So noses, you breathe in because you're trying to get odorants to come into your nose, and then they often get this, although it's not necessarily a lock and key model because there is a new model involving electron tunneling out there. And these models all involve close contact with the receptor. With insects, there seems to be no way that close contact can occur because these odorants cannot readily make it inside the antenna based upon some of the scientific evidence that is out there right there. And if they're not getting inside the antenna, but we know that the insects can smell within about 1 millisecond, 10 milliseconds at the slowest, 1 millisecond, if not below 1 millisecond at the fastest, this then causes me and others to think that there's probably another process involved in insect olfaction. And so if it's operating at a distance, albeit a very small distance, probably no more than 3 millimeters, probably less, where it simply needs to get in close contact with the antenna, and then the electromagnetic signature, these vibrational frequencies are picked up by the antenna, and then it is then detected by chemoreceptors on the inside of these antennae. They have certain absorption frequencies that are associated with these chemoreceptors, and I then break them down and decipher the insect olfactory code by taking a look at these chemoreceptors. I see your eyes starting to glaze over, so I'm going to stop right now.
Well,
no, that was
you've got a follow-up question.
No, that was an interesting fact.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
speaking of interesting fact.
Oh, the
Hey.
interesting fact of the week, Fred.
Oh, we got to do the interesting fact of the week,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Doug,
yes.
are you ready?
Dr. Dykstra may
Dr.
not be
Dykstra.
familiar,
We'll
but
have to- yeah.
this is the part in the show that the whole audience has been waiting for the whole time, Dr. Dykstra. It's the interesting fact of the week.
Okay, so here is the interesting fact of the week. Doug, what is the fastest flying insect in the world?
The fastest flying insect is that bee that got in my car. I think that was the fastest flying. It's the fastest one I ever encountered. But you're talking about overall. You can't buzz me for a joke. So maybe that means
Yeah, I
it wasn't. It's not a very good joke. So you're talking about the fastest insect throughout all the insect kingdom. And
Yes.
so I would have to try to think of who is the king of the insects and who would be the fastest flying insect. And first of all, I would question, how do we know? That's my first. I'm just going to file that objection right there.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's been a race.
Oh yeah, policemen are always out there with their radar.
Boy, that's a tough one. Can I ask for help? So, the dragonfly? No, dragonflies are
Dragonfly's
slow.
the best flyer, not necessarily the fastest.
Is
but
that
they
right?
are the best. They
Oh.
have the maneuverability, so they are the best flyers in the in class Insecta. So you're not too far off. Now you'd be wrong based upon how the question was asked.
Oh.
But you're very very close to it.
Well, the dragonfly was suggested to me by our assistant producer Nicole because I was
She knows
begging,
a lot about bugs.
I was begging for help. So
Did you catch my Freudian slip? She knows a lot about Doug. No, I mean bugs.
I missed that. I heard the cheering, Fred,
Yeah,
but I didn't
yeah.
know if that was because
Well,
Dr.
according
Dykstra
to
made a
my
better joke
research,
than
the
me.
fastest flying insect is the dragonfly.
Oh, it's the dragonfly, huh?
It is.
Oh, I would
Can we get
disagree
that
with
again?
that.
Oh, wait, we have
You
an
would?
entomologist
Okay,
disagree.
good.
All right. What about the bee?
I was told by the policemen, whom I know very well, first name basis, and I won't tell you how I know that, that the botflies, I think the botflies are faster than the dragonflies. Now, they don't have the maneuvering of the dragonflies. The dragonflies can just stop, go right, go left. They can go backwards.
Yeah, you're
the
right.
only insect that can go backwards. So no other insect can do that, and they have incredible maneuverability. But I think the botflies, I could be wrong on this, are probably faster than the dragonflies. That's
The
my
botfly.
best
Okay.
guess.
I don't know if I've ever heard of a botfly.
Well, I think I think there could be significant interest in arranging some sort of contest between a botfly and a dragonfly. But I hadn't
Well,
thought
hey, earlier in the show, I almost had a Freudian slip. I was reading the notes, and I was going to ask about, plant-eating bugs, but I almost got it backwards. So what's a bug-eating plant?
Well, there's several.
Yeah.
The most common one is the Venus flytrap.
Yeah, those
That's
are
the
great.
most common one. Everyone understands about that, but there are other plants out there that eat bugs. They just don't do so in such a dramatic way as the Venus flytrap. So the sundew plant has a way of, they have sticky substances, and then once the insect gets caught, you will actually see the leaf start to bend over very, very slowly on the insect who can't escape because it's in a sticky mess. The Venus flytrap is more of a clapping motion. We love watching that. I could spend hours, looking at YouTube videos with Venus flytraps, catching everything from wasps to centipedes to insects, and so it's all good time. It's all a good time.
Now, before we move on to the next question, you mentioned microbes bringing nutrients to plants. And so in my mind, microbes are technically bugs, at least in my mind. Maybe they don't
And you'd be wrong, but go ahead.
Okay, that helps. So you can buzz me if you want there, Fred. So what's the difference between a microbe and an insect then?
Okay, well, insects have 6 legs. And this is often how they're defined. Insects have 6 legs. They have jointed appendages. They have a pair of antennae. This is kind of what characterizes insects. Microbes don't have proper antennae. They do have biological antennae, I would argue, but that's a story for a different, real science radio episode completely, because there are many different ways to detect fields. So microbes don't have 6 legs, they don't have the antenna, they don't have jointed appendages. They're usually small, amorphous, Sometimes they have shape associated with them, like the paramecium. Sometimes they don't, like the amoeba. And so they just kind of move around the soil. They've got different roles that they do, and there's a lot of bacteria, and those are even smaller than some of the protozoa that I just mentioned. And it is these bacteria, microbes, that are working with the plant, usually found in association with the root. And you just had an aha moment because I saw your finger go up, Doug, so I don't know exactly what that means, but I should probably shut up and allow you to elaborate.
That was the index finger for our radio audience.
And by the way, for our radio audience and for our audience, for those of you who matriculated in the government schools, olfaction means smelling. Just, I don't want people to remain confused about it. We got people trying to look that up. But my aha moment was that you've elucidated the source of my confusion, and it's bacteria. Because I get sick, I got a bacteria, I got a bug. But that's not the same as an insect kind of bug. That's a different kind of bug. But we tend to call them all bugs.
We do.
But being an entomologist, you know there's a difference.
I'm held to a higher standard. You are not, Doug.
That's right. Okay, now, so we talked a little bit about the controversy around insect olfaction, and you stated your position. I want to talk about pest control and pesticides. Have I been lied to that pesticides changed farming for the better in the early 20th century, and pesticides are what have enabled the massive increase in the availability of food around the world, which cannot be denied? 200 years ago, there were a lot more people starving than there are now, and I've been told that it's because of pesticide and modern farming techniques, and so can you tell me if that's true?
I've been told the same thing, so I would agree with that. However, when you are protecting an unhealthy plant with these pesticides, you are doing the plant a disservice, and you are doing the human who might be eating that plant a disservice as well. What that means, if you're kind of following the direction I'm going in right now, is that if we are eating unhealthy food, we are going to get sick more often. We are going to have more disease. We are going to have, it can range from more colds, more flu. It can be, of course, cancer and other things like this, which have been associated with certain pesticides as well. So I would argue that, okay, we may be feeding more of the world because we have more dense crops and we have more food. There's no question about it. But this food is not healthy. And that if you start eating healthy food, your appetite will go down. Meaning you will eat less food. So if you are getting if your food is not nutrient dense, what will happen then is that you will keep eating, and you will require, the body will require certain nutrients, and you will get it by demanding those foods. So there are a lot of sugar-based foods where you will find a lot of nutrients that are dissolved in water. The water-based nutrients are found, and you will usually want something sugary, like an apple or an orange. If you want a fat-based nutrient, such as vitamins A and D, you will go after something fat. So we have a desire to eat sugary foods, we have a desire to eat fatty foods, and this is in part in order to give us the nutrients that our body needs. But if we bypass that mechanism, and we can, so we realize that we're short some water-soluble nutrients, and we go for a candy bar. So we eat the candy bar, our taste buds are telling us, this is really sweet, this is good, I like this. Then by the time it gets down to our stomach, a few hours later, we realize that it's not giving us the nutrition that it needs. And we start to get hungry again. And we may either want another candy bar, or we may want some nutritious food. And that's where some of the problem comes in, because when you're eating healthy food, you are requiring less, as you should, and the same thing goes for a plant. A plant will not be requiring as much food. It won't have to go through as much trouble if the microbes are working in conjunction with it. How am I doing so far, Doug?
Wow, that's wow. Enlightening. So it could be that modern farming techniques are a big part of why we can feed the world. I think it also has to do with the global dominance of Christian liberty in the Western world that has become kind of the global standard, that there's just more liberty and there's less tyranny. And I think that has a lot to do with feeding the world as well. But now that we've mechanized farming to the point where we can feed the world and even have a lot left over, perhaps we've reached a time when it would be appropriate now to improve our farming techniques to improve the quality of the food. We've got the quantity. Now can we improve the quality?
I love the way you're thinking. This has been brought up before. It is a great way of thinking, Doug, so I'm just going to congratulate you. I'm going to pat you on the back right now. You are truly much smarter than you look, so I appreciate that fact. As far as this is concerned, I wanted to go back and tell you, yes, did you know that farmers are being paid not to farm?
Oh,
Yeah.
believe
Ooh,
me,
wow.
yeah.
So yeah, we do have too much that is out there right now. So when you have a farmer who wants to farm, but he's being paid not to farm, that gives you an idea that we have a massive amount of food out there. We do have distribution problems. That's certainly part of it. And then when we go to some of the third world countries, we are telling them that they cannot raise food that will give them the nutrition that they need, that they have to protect their food with fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and things like that, and then problems result, and it is more likely to starve to death when you don't have the nutrients. You can actually survive on relatively smaller amount of food as long as the nutrition is getting inside of you, and that would go to a great way in helping to reduce I would say hunger. I'm talking about true hunger now. I'm just not talking about calories, which often people think about when they think of hunger. I'm talking about you get hungry because you want certain nutrients to be satisfied. So if you're short the fat-soluble vitamins, you will want a fatty food. And if you're short the water-soluble vitamins, you will usually want those. And this is why our taste buds are uniquely attuned to fatty foods and sugary foods. Those are the things that we require more than anything else. And if we deny fatty foods and sugary foods, we immediately run into some kind of trouble. But this is why, I mean, look at the snacks that are out there. They go after two things: our sweet tooth and our desire to have fats.
Right.
That's what our snack food does, but they don't have the nutrients in them, and therefore we're now bypassing the mechanism. People get hungry, and then they eat more. And they're eating more because they're starving to death, because their nutritional makeup is not the way that it should be. And of course, this has to do with weight gain. Did you know too that weight gain is attributed to, in no small part, to the fats? If you don't have the fat soluble vitamins, you will get more fat, and this will allow you to store the fat soluble vitamins. So if you're starving of these fat soluble vitamins, you'll put on weight so that the body can efficiently store these fat soluble vitamins. So we know that insects do this, and we also know that all other animals do it as well. And so these, I don't think I'm blowing your mind right now, but I'm just trying to introduce some common sense as to how nutrition is understood, whether it be from a microbe, whether it be from an insect, and even, if I may, go all the way to a human being.
Wow.
So would you recommend fat-soluble vitamin supplements each day? And that would, sounds like that would help promote not eating as much. Am I hearing it that
I mean,
correctly,
to
or
a certain extent, you're correct. And I do take vitamins because I know that my food is not as nutrient dense as it should be. However, I also know, and other people will tell you that too, is that you don't very efficiently absorb these fat-soluble or water-soluble vitamins. Because of that, it is always better to get it in your food. I just wish that the food was better so that I could revert to that, because it's true, we didn't have vitamins 2,000, 3,000 years ago. We didn't have the pesticides, we didn't have the vitamins, but now, based upon the new way of doing things, the vitamins become a little bit more important. So even if I'm pulling in 20%, 10%, 5% of the nutrients from the vitamins that I take, I consider this to be valuable enough in order to continue taking vitamins during the day, because I know that my food is not going to give me the nutrients that I need.
Okay, so follow on then. As you were talking about all this, there's this thing with organic foods when you go shopping, King Soopers or whatever. Is there value in actually picking the organic food? I mean, I've kind of ignored it. And I've seen studies, maybe one, where it said there's really not that big of a difference, but I don't know, maybe there is. What's your opinion on organic foods?
Yeah, my opinion on organic food is that it can be just as unhealthy as conventionally raised pesticide food, but oftentimes it's not. And so when I'm getting organic food, and I try to get that when I can, although there's not a lot to choose from, usually I would have to put the seed in the ground myself and then just, eat the plants that I make on my 5-acre property. So because of that, that's probably a better way to go. But if I get food from the store, I realize there's going to be some problems with it. And so therefore, this supplementation comes in, and I understand that this is where some people are going. This is where I'm going right now. I'm sorry, what was your question again, Fred? I think I just diverged.
Yeah, no, it's pretty close. It was about organic foods, because everybody there's a big
I
organic
try to get organic
food
because
thing.
when you get organic, you're not getting the pesticides. So if you're getting
Okay.
pesticides into your body, you will have to excrete them, and that is going to take energy. So you're going to have to produce the esterases. You're going to have to produce the P450s. You're going to have to produce the glutathione S transferases. Those are all the detoxification enzymes, and there's a whole bunch of them in each of those 3 main groups. And in order to produce those detoxification enzymes, you have to use energy in order to make them. Meaning, if you continually eat pesticides, this is going to lower your energy levels. And so that's why I try to avoid conventionally raised if I can. So organic is usually better, not always. And that's why I measure it. Because
Okay.
I've tested organic crap before, and I realize this is a family show, and I hope I'm not going to be bleeped out of this. I don't know. Maybe I am. Is that going to be included in there, or am I going to be excluded?
No, that's an
good.
accurate
Okay.
We're
description.
good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay, so because of this, if there's conventional crap that's out there and I don't want to eat it, if there's organic crap I don't want to eat it, I'm looking for a high Brix plant, because a higher Brix plant I know by default is going to have more nutrient density associated with it. You can't get 16 Brix on a leaf and say that it's not a healthy plant. Of course it is. But you can measure leaf Brix, which I do, and then you can also measure fruit Brix, because fruit Brix is also going to have a particular sugar level or total dissolved solids associated with it. So when I'm looking at an apple or an orange, I would like to have an apple that's at least 18 Brix. I would like to have an orange that's at least 18 Brix. I've tasted a 21 Brix orange before. Grapes are usually picked at about 24 Brix for wine. Those are the highest quality grapes. You're looking at about 22 Brix for some of the raisins. They also ask for high quality stuff. By the time you get below 20 Brix grapes, you're talking about table grapes, which are going to be in the 15, maybe 18 Brix range at a maximum. Once you get to 12 Brix grapes, they're just going to throw them into jellies. And then they're going to be so low Brix, they're going to taste so bad that the jelly manufacturers will have to add high fructose corn syrup and other types of sugar to the jelly in order to sweeten it up, because it doesn't taste good. So I've just gone through the full gamut of grapes right now, and so you see when you're measuring these fruits, which you can get in the store, this gives you an idea of what type of quality you're dealing with, and that's where the refractometer can become so useful, because it can measure leaves for farmers, and there's great benefit in that, but it also helps the homeowner like Doug, the backyard gardener like Doug, is that there are many different ways in order to cater to that lower level way of thinking that you're not at, Fred. I know Doug is, but
Well, that-
you're at a much higher level, Fred. I know you only eat fine dining all the time. I get that.
Well, so I'm wondering what happens, Dr. Dykstra, when with the King Soopers produce manager, when he sees this guy in his fruit and vegetable section measuring all the plants and the refractors out there, and I mean, do you catch a lot of flack for that?
I would if I brought it into the store, but usually I buy it, then I bring it home in order to avoid being attacked.
Yeah, I had this image of you in the store, kind
Yeah.
of slinking around
By the
measuring
fruit fleece.
stuff.
By the fruit fleece, correct.
Well, you know what though? Because I do think on a certain level below most other humans, that does bring up an interesting question in my mind. Anyways, what you're describing is something of a philosophy, and I would like to know the level of pushback you get on this philosophy from farmers versus academia. What's the comparison to how what you think and believe and preach is received on the farm versus at the university?
Well, it's like night and day. It's like 0 and 1. It's digital. There are very few people in academia who are in full blown agreement with me. There are some people who disagree with me on very many different counts, not just on the Brix, but the insect olfaction. I'm totally aware of it. I get it. As far as the farmers are concerned, some of them are also against it because they've been doing the same thing for 30, sometimes 40 years. I get that too. There are a number of people who are more open-minded and talking to those farmers about it. You're able to make more headway. I've also had some individuals, I kid you not, who have come up to me and say, I'm talking to a farmer who's in his 70s, and he says, I don't think I have another year worth of farming left. I'm at the last straw right now. I need to know what to do because I cannot continue doing what I'm doing. And I know the statistics. I know the number of farmers that we had in January last month is going to be less than it will be December of this year, because we are constantly losing farmers. And so when you have a farmer who is desperate, practically in tears, talking to you, please help me, at that point, you can make a lot more headway because they have now been through the gamut. They understand the problems that are coming from the way that they've been farming and that they are slowly going out of business, while some of the other companies are making massive profits. The farmers are not making the profits right now, by the way. So they're usually being subsidized by the government. They're not making a lot of profit. And because of this, there needs to be something changed. And that is the people who actually make our food should be getting more money than they are getting right now. That happens to be my philosophy, since we're talking about philosophy right now. In order to change that, you got to do something about it. And that means, dare I say, going against some in academia. So when you're going against someone in academia, I try my best in order to keep it to a scientific argument, because if you argue science, they could usually have a decent conversation with them. And so I have to argue things like Brix. If they haven't heard of it, then I would say, well, this is the kind of the direction that we need to go. If they want to go in another direction, I would have to change it, because many people have different ways of arguing. When you're dealing with people like farmers, some of them are much more open to this. This is part of the reason why I talk more to them than I do in academia. Academia, I've had just a few, and I mean relatively few, professors who have called me and tell me that they've essentially been closet fans for a number of years right now. And I'm thinking like, okay, are you going to come out right now? And some of them are of the opinion is like, look, I don't have tenure yet, so there's no way I'm coming out with anything like this. And plus, to make matters worse, there's no way you're going to get funding for something like this. So in academia, it's all about writing grants and getting funding. And because you're not going to get funding on Brix, why go in this direction? You can't support yourself. You can't support graduate students. This is not the direction you want to go in. And so I understand, because I've got 10 people to feed. I've got 8 kids. I've got a wife to feed. And because of this, I've got to deal with feeding my family. It's the same thing with them. If they have a family to feed, whether or not they have kids or not, you still have to pay for food. You've got to be able to pay for a roof over your head. I get that. So I'm not pushing academia to go in this direction, because I realize that this could be a major problem for them. I have taken the hit. I will continue to take the hits. And as long as I continue to survive, I may be eking out an existence, but I continue to do so because I feel that this is what God wants me to do. He has given me at least enough of a mind in order to understand some of the arguments so that I can deal with those arguments and I can deal with those questions, and that I can educate on a level that I feel is appropriate based upon the audience that I'm dealing with.
Wow.
Amen.
Well,
preach it, brother. I love it. We all have, God has given us all various skills and talents and aptitudes, and while our primary function on earth is to reveal God to people who don't know him, all of us have to also make a living. So we also have to eat and feed our families. And by the way, Paul says if you don't take care of your family, you're worse than an infidel. So that's a primary obligation. But what you just said about academia, we hear this all the time, that the money system in academia, the grants especially. Well, no, yeah. It's almost like USAID and the Treasury Department, and if they let them in, the Education Department, they've become so corrupt that the function that they were originally intended for has been so perverted that it's now counterproductive. And I think it's time for just a wholesale restructuring of however it is research money is being doled out. Something dramatic needs to change, because there's a level of retardation and corruption that is I mean, it's a civilizational. It's an existential threat to civilization at this point, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, maybe it's part of, maybe the Make America Healthy again will, change things.
Well, I hope so.
We're kind of running down on time. I wanted to ask one last question, Dr. Dykstra. So
All right.
What's the most fascinating or interesting insect that you've encountered?
Fascinating or interesting? I usually don't deal with particular insects. It's figuring out how they smell that has turned out to be the most fascinating thing for me. However, if you're kind of asking me what my favorite insect is, and I think you're kind of going in that direction right now, that I do find kind of fascinating, it's hands down, it's the praying mantis. I've raised praying mantises before. I've raised them from eggs. I've had them when they look like little mosquitoes and they come out. I've raised them up to adulthood. I love seeing full-grown adults in the field. I love seeing them act. I love how they turn their heads around. I love their behavior, and I've had a chance to witness some of the behaviors of them that I've never heard about before. So as you spend time simply observing, which is what many scientists do, you learn things about your particular group of insects. So even though I don't study praying mantises as a hobby, I've looked at them enough, and I've learned a number of very interesting things that get me giddy.
Yeah.
That's something I've observed, Dr. Dykstra. No matter how old or jaded or cynical you are, when you discover a praying mantis in the wild, you act like a 4-year-old. All of us.
Yeah.
Ain't it true?
Yeah. Well, God's wondrous
You
works.
catch eyes with it, and then the praying mantis turns its head and looks directly at you.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, man, that is so cool.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. I don't know the exact verse, but it's God's wondrous works were made to be remembered. So.
Amen.
He was probably thinking about praying mantises when that was said.
Yeah. Boy, so cool.
Speaking of mantis, one of my favorites is a mantis shrimp, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh, yeah. You like the energy behind that one.
Yeah, exactly. Thumb splitters.
Because several times you wanted to use it on Doug. I get that. Yeah. People are going to start looking up mantis shrimp right now. Like, how does that apply to? And then they're like, oh, I see. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Dykstra, it's been an amazing blessing to have you on, and I just hope that you'll consider being our go-to guy when, as this Make America Healthy Again agenda happens, there are going to be things and controversies and events that occur that we may want your advice, and we really appreciate having you on and having you as a resource, and just want to wish God's blessings to you and all your efforts, and that he'll bless you abundantly and your abundant family. Praise the Lord. That's so awesome. I hope he blesses you all abundantly, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. Blessings upon the both of you as well. Blessings upon this Real Science Radio that you put forward. It's obviously given some people like myself an opportunity to talk a little bit more about God than we usually do when we're out there presenting. So thank you both.
Awesome.
Thank you. So for Dr. Thomas Dykstra and my co-host Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.